Hi folks, in this particular video what I'd like to be able to do is just talk about naval units themselves. So what I've done here is I've removed most of the, well, all of the Air Force and most of the infantry and armor units and some naval units, and just place naval units in certain areas so that I can concentrate on certain ideas on what naval units can do. Again, this is the basics. I'm not going to get into numerical advantage or, odds and calculations and so forth. I just want to show the basics. When you look at the axes view of the UK here and their vision of what they see, well, you can see here, as I mentioned with the subs guide here, you have your merchant marines that are bringing resources into the UK from either Africa, the US, or Canada. And we noticed or saw in the other previous guide that subs could intercept that information. We also noticed that subs could also intercept or blockade resources going to certain ports. So I'm just going to concentrate on two ports here. I'm going to look at Hull from the German perspective. So when you look at Hull from the German perspective out of all of it, I didn't want to zoom in, but here you go. It has resources here. This is basically a supply source. What I see on my turn, that is, it's an urban port. I can see the resources that it has 5, and all I really see out of all of it is that it's a big port of size 9, so it can do a lot of things as that we learned, that it can repair ships and having an unlimited number of fleets there and so forth. That's all I see from the Axis perspective. When I move to a port like Scapa Flow, and again I'm going to just remove the unit here so I can concentrate on Scapa Flow here. When I take a look at it, I see that it has no resources here on Scapa Flow, and again I see it's a big port, a size 9 port, which has no limitations to what it can do. But because it's a port supplied, what ends up happening is I would expect that 9 times 20, it should get 180 supply points. Whereas when we looked at Hull there being a supply source, that it'll get an unlimited supply source out of all of it. So again, just taking a look at two ports here, Edinburgh here, I'm looking at Edinburgh, and again I can click on Edinburgh here and I can see that it's of size 5, but it has resources there. And because it has resources there, Edinburgh, I can't blockade, or I can't set up a blockade to stop supply from going there. So again, looking at from a German perspective, there's some information that's prevented from me, is not provided to me, but by looking at the map itself and seeing the information, I can get an idea whether or not I can actually blockade the port. Looking at Newcastle here, and again looking at the bottom left of your screen there, you can see it's an urban port of supply 9 again. It doesn't contain any resources, but again, would I be able to blockade it? Probably not, because what ends up happening is it's a supply source. So when we move over towards, let's say, the Axis turn, I've got a unit out of supply here, don't know why, but when we move to the UK turn, we can take a better look at those ports and see that what we can do. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click back on the units here, and I'm going to move to the next turn. And we're going to see the UK setup here before I move the axes so we can better understand what's happening here. Okay, moving towards the UK turn, now the ports will contain all the information I need, and I want to concentrate on Scapa Flow, Newcastle, and Hull, so you can see them there. I'm going to get rid of the units themselves, and I'm going to click on Hull here. So when you click on Hull here and you take a look at the bottom portion of the screen, so always remember I'm going to be looking and talking about the bottom portion of the screen as I click on it, you can see it's a main supply source. And because Hull's a main supply source, you won't be able to blockade this port. It will always be given supply. So any unit there, you're not going to be able to limit the amount of ammunition that it's going to be able to get. If I turn around and let's say I go to click on Newcastle, we can see that Newcastle, and again if you look at your bottom left hand part of your screen, is also a main supply source. Edinburgh, exactly the same thing. But when you look at Scapa Flow, that's totally different. Scapa Flow is a port, takes port supply, so that means resources need to be shipped to it, and if resources need to be shipped to it, then you can actually blockade it. So let's put the troops back in there, or the fleets back in there, and take a closer look at some of the fleets here. Now when I look at this particular fleet, I've set it up in a fleet mode. You can see that in the top left of the screen. I hate when it zooms in like that. Sorry about that, folks. I'm just getting used to this sort of software. This is in fleet mode. Whenever it's in fleet mode, what ends up happening, just like subs, it projects a 5 radius interception zone. So this fleet has been set up in such a way to protect the actual coast. Anything coming in, any enemy fleet coming into this particular range will be attacked, or at least attempted to be attacked. It try to intercept it. So basically this fleet's been set up to protect the coast here from probably invasion. I would probably set up some sort of air power to help it out also, but that's the idea here. This fleet here has been set up to prevent, it looks like more than likely, an invasion of Hull and Newcastle, and we'll explore that idea on the axis turn and movement. Let's move over further down. This fleet here, I just want to show how it reacts here. This fleet is also in fleet mode. You can see that from the top left hand of your screen here. So it too would project a certain radius. Let's see, so it's creating a zone also of 5 hexes, and I'm just going to estimate this. I'm not going to draw this, so this way we can go a little bit faster here. So any enemy fleet ending its turn in that particular area, what will end up happening is this fleet's going to react to it and try to intercept it. So keep that in mind. That's what's been set up from the British point of view. Other than that, I've just got the rest of the fleets that are in port here. I've got a CV, a battle group, a cruiser group, and a patrol group. And in this other one, I have a battle group, a cruiser group, and a patrol group out of all of it in that one too. So let's move into the axis turn, and let's take a look at attacking the convoy route. And let's look at blockading supply to a particular port. I also want to talk a little bit about the protection of the coast itself. So when I move vessels into a particular area, the idea that what will end up happening is that it will be attacked. It would seem from another guide I have a particular fleet here, and I just gave it some supply. That's one way you can provide supply to it, but I'll have to remove that from my other videos. Okay, let's take a look at the axes here. First things first. If I were setting up some sort of blockade for port supply, what I would do is, and I would have probably a little bit of a bigger fleet here, I would go into raider mode here, and I'd probably go about 2 hexes away. You can go, I believe, 3 hexes or 4 hexes away. The closer you are to the port, the more chance that you're going to be able to destroy more supplies. I want to be in a state where it's going to be hard for me to be intercepted from a fleet standpoint. So and I want to concentrate strictly on limiting the supplies that are going into Scapa Flow. Notice if I tried to do that to Newcastle or Edinburgh, that's useless because those are main supply sources. I wouldn't be able to stop the supply going into Edinburgh because it's getting supply from another area out of all of it. Now, just to show you the reaction of this British vessel here, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take one of my fleets here, and I'm going to move into the range within the 5 hex. So I'm planning on attacking this fleet, and I don't know that from a German point point of view that this fleet is in fleet mode. So I go to move it in there, and I'm surprised because what ends up happening is it attacks me first. It's protecting the coast. It's reacting. So then when I go here, out of all of it, I can see they call it a surface interdiction. My fleet was attacked. I've lost the Bismarck battle group out of all of it, and because the attack was so violent, what ends up happening is my fleet retreats to a safer hex out of all of it. I've taken a lot of damage, and you can see by the British setting up their ship into a fleet mode near a coast, it's sort of protecting a group of ports. And any vessel that ends its turn there will end up having the ship fleet, the UK fleet, intercepting it. Now, will combat occur? It may not occur in all situations. Here's an example where I'm going to do the exact same thing. It only happens twice, by the way, because the British fleet only has 2 operational points here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my units, my marine units, and embark them on transports here. So I'm not going to invade, but I'm just going to pretend that I'm going to hull to invade here, and you can see that the British vessel will attempt an interception out of all of it. Once again, causing damage to my patrol group, which is supposed to be protecting my transport, and it looks like the British fleet has caused some damage with regard to the transport. Remember, like I mentioned before, it's only limited. There isn't an unlimited amount here. Here I have an unprotected transport, which is usually a bad idea. And as I move here, what happens is the British fleet will not intercept now because it's limited to 2. It's covered its turn. It has 2 operational points per turn. In this particular situation, on the enemy turn, it's used its 2 operational points, and it'll get other operational points on its turn again, but from the standpoint of how many actions it can perform on the enemy turn, there's 2. That's the limit. So remember, this German vessel, which I've placed in raider mode, I could have kept it in surface mode, its purpose is to actually interdict the supplies going into Scapa Flow. Now, looking at the German units here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this one into raider mode, and I'm going to go on to one of the convoy lanes here to actually attack the supply that's coming from the South Atlantic or Africa in particular here. I could do the same with this one here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it within range of my carrier here, and I'm keeping this one in surface mode here. And the reason why I'm keeping it in surface mode here is just to show you that the reality is I can attack in fleet mode, or I can attack, that's what I call surface mode. I can attack the convoy route in fleet mode, or I can attack the convoy route in raider mode. Now remember, raider mode, I'm trying to avoid combat with surface fleets. As you can see here, the carrier force, because it exerts a radius of 5 hexes, it reacted to the German fleet entering into the convoy lane. So this fleet was set up in such a way to protect this area of the convoy lane. Now, you could argue it's using a lot of oil to do so. Yes, it is, but this is what its purpose was. And you saw when you go to take a look at this that it actually caused a lot of damage to the German fleet here. And again, the radius is about 5 hexes that it projects, and this allows you to cover a certain area and protect a certain area. That's the purpose of keeping it in fleet mode. Now, when the British here will counterattack here, so notice there's no operational points with the Axis, so they will not be able to attack the convoy lane in this turn, but this fleet has 1 operational point, so it should be able to do a blockade to Scapa Flow, and I'm not going to attack it because I just want to see that first. So let's go into the British turn and see this in action. Okay, so you can see here now that the port of Scapa Flow here is reduced in its supply. So what's happening, and you can see this on the bottom left here, instead of getting its full complement of 180 resource points, it's not. The German fleet is blockading supply from getting into the port. And like I said, it's either 3 or 4 hexes away you could be, and depending how far away you are is whether or not how much of the supply you're actually going to prevent from going into the port. Now, if I were to move that fleet over to, let's say, Edinburgh, well, it will have no impact because this is a main supply source. So you can see here, I can prevent ammunition, weapons from entering into the port. So if there is an infantry unit there, eventually, as I attack it, it will begin to weaken. And that's one of the things I can do with my fleets themselves. Notice in my situation here, I've put my fleet here, and again I apologize folks as I'm getting to learn the keystrokes of this new software here as I zoom in and out. My fleet here, the Axis fleet, could have been in raider mode or could have been in fleet mode if I wanted to. The icon that appears for a port interdiction you can see in your top right hand corner. It's the exclamation mark there. That tells me that I have stopped or prevented a certain portion of supplies entering the particular port. And when I click on it, what ends up happening is it actually takes me to that port itself. Kind of puts a little circle on it. So I'm going to click on it here so that you can see it. So there you go. So it's telling me here that I've reduced the flow of supply into Scapa Flow. Notice here my particular British vessel here or fleet here is got low supplies. Well, one of the things that you can do, and if you've been buying them, is you can provide supplies to them through an oiler and resupply the fleet while it's in sea, just like in real life. So by clicking on the oiler refuel icon, and you can see it at the top portion here right now, I have 71 oilers available, and again I set that up folks. In a game I usually wouldn't have that many, so I'm just going to click on it. You can see now there's a green little box that appears on the fleet itself. It has 2 operational points, and if I want I can use now this fleet for a couple more turns to attack enemy vessels. Now because this is in surface mode, I can turn around and attack by going next to the enemy vessel that I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up here. I'm going to look at the battle group first, and I'm going to go after this bottom transport, and I'm going to show you that I'm going to click there and right mouse click over it, so I move next to the enemy unit that I want to attack, and I'm going to move my mouse cursor on top of the enemy unit and right mouse click. And you can see in this situation my battleship was actually found and destroyed out of all of it. So I took the worst part of that. But notice here, if I go into raider mode and I go to try to do the exact same thing here, I can't attack in raider mode. Because again, in raider mode, you're not trying to look for a battle. You're actually trying to avoid contact with the enemy. So you have to be in surface mode, or sorry, fleet mode I should say, to be able to attack enemy vessels. And again, if you're in surface mode, you'll also project a 5 hex radius patrol area where you can turn around and attack enemies that enter and stop their movement within that. Notice here, if I'm moving over to this particular area of combat here, I'm going to end up using both of my operational points, so I won't be able to attack. So once you use your operational points here, and I'm just going to go a little bit closer here, you need at least 1 operational point to be able to attack the enemy fleet. Now, taking a look at now our Axis troops here, this one here is within range of my particular carrier force here. So whether or not the Axis fleet is in radar mode or fleet mode, I would be able to attack it. I know this one is in fleet mode, or I should say in fleet mode. I'm going to right mouse click, and you can see it didn't find it, couldn't do anything about it. I can attack it again because I have another operational point. Again, I move my mouse cursor on top of it and right mouse click, and again no combat occurs. I've used all my operational points, and I'm going to supply it also with a oiler so I can stay out there a little bit longer. So let's move forward now, because I want to show the difference between what it looks like on the reports. The difference between a convoy attack, where you're destroying merchant marines and escorts, and a port interdiction, and how they appear on the actual reports themselves. So as you can see here, I now have again 2 operational points here. So this turn here, again, it will perform an interdiction of the port supply. I now have 2 operational points here, so they will attack the convoy lane. So let's move forward in this turn and see that actually happening, and what it looks like from our point of view in reports. Okay, so you can see here that there have been 2 convoy attacks, and that supply on the top line here had happened at Scapa Flow. So when I'm looking at the report itself, again, just excuse that, this is the port interdiction, and these are the actual convoy attacks. So the convoy attacks seem to have sunk 2 merchants and 0 escorts. That's the BC battle group, and the other BB battle group has done no damage. It's attacked, but is no damage. Whereas the port interdiction of Scapa Flow has prevented 40, again, points of supply entering into the port. So that's one way of actually seeing how that supply is prevented from going into the port, or that your fleets have attacked the convoys themselves. You can go into the combat log, and you can see that the port blockade is called a supply interdiction, and it'll explain to you that 40 stockpile has been eliminated from the 180. And convoy attacks tell you how many merchant marines were sunk and so forth. It doesn't tell you how much flow of resources you prevented, but it does tell you how many merchant marines you sank. And if I wanted to see a total here, I could go up to the reports and take a look at the casualties. And again, these are just estimates from the Axis point of view when you're looking at information from the UK. And it says here that I've sunk 1 merchant marine, 0 escorts. Now, knowing that the UK has over 200 at this point in time, I've made no impact on the amount of resources that have actually entered the UK. So keep that in mind. And in my turn, what I've done is I've harassed the attacking groups with this particular carrier group. Remember, because these are surface fleets and not subs, I could attack them also with surface vessels. To prove that point, what I'm going to do is, remember, this is in surface mode, the other one's in fleet mode. What I'm going to do is I'm going to separate this, and notice the carrier group can be away from the actual fleet. I just move towards it. I have 1 operational point. Move my cursor over the fleet I wish to attack, and right mouse click. I did not spot it, so I couldn't engage it. Here's the battle group. This one here, I got to go next to the fleet and have 1 OP left, so I'm going to right mouse click to move into position. You can see it's highlighted. Even though this is in radar mode, I move my mouse over the enemy fleet and right mouse click, and again, I didn't find it. I couldn't spot it. So when I click on it, I can see it's at naval ID 0, the lowest one. It's very low. And I'm going to take the last one here, and just to show you, this fleet here is in fleet mode. So it's going to counterattack me. So I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to surprise it. I get there. Oh, wait a minute. You're right. I forgot. I changed it into raider mode on the German turn. And now I right mouse click on it. And again, in deep water, very difficult to find the enemy fleets. So keep that in mind. Okay, the last part of the video, we've talked about the main parts, is what about when you put fleets close to the coast? Well, when you put fleets close to the coast, they become a lot easier to actually spot and attack. The best way to attack fleets is through air, but this video doesn't talk about air. I just want to concentrate on fleets themselves. But as you saw from the previous battles, what ends up happening is if you're trying to attack fleets in the deep blue sea, very difficult to find. But what about these fleets that are close to the coast here? So again, I built a lot of oilers here so I can keep these things at sea a little bit longer. And I'm just going to move to this ship here, and I'm going to bring it closer to the coast if I can, so you can see the difference here. So here I have a patrol group, here I have a patrol group and a transport, and here I have just a transport that's all alone. And I'm going to take the 3 surface fleets for the UK, and I'm going to attack this invasion force, if you may. Now, these fleets here, being that these fleets are near the coast, what ends up happening is the recon level is high from the point of view of the fleets. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to click on the fleet itself, and you can see from the bottom left of your screen here that the reconnaissance level of that hex is actually high out of all of it. In fact, if I turn around and I click on all of them there, again, I apologize as I'm getting used to this, they're all high, and you can see them from the bottom. The other thing you can notice is that the information provided by the Naval ID, that is the top portion of your screen, you can see here, this is also high. It's telling me that I have a Marine division with that particular unit. If I were to click on the other ones, this one here is very low because I'm not given any information when I take a look at the top left hand of the screen. And this one here is high also because it's telling me that I have no battleships and that I have a one ship within the area itself. So keep that in mind. There's really 4 levels there. There's very low, low, medium, and high when you're dealing with information provided. And again, you can see here with the icon, there's icons on the top right of your screen that tells you whether or not your port's interdicted or what kind of supplies you lost. Or you can go into the report screen and actually see them from the British point of view also. Now, what I want to do is I just want to show you. Whenever you're attacking enemy fleets near a coast, they're actually easier to spot and destroy. So I'm going to take this fleet here, which is 1 patrol group, and I'm going to move alongside. You notice that it's moving at night because it has the night icon here. So it'll be able to surprise the enemy a little bit more within naval combat. In this video, I do not want to get into how things are calculated. I move next to it and I right mouse click, and lo and behold, I'm in raider mode here. And I messed up the attack. Well, that was no good. Let's just make sure I'm in fleet mode here, and let's move here. And I'm going to attack. Notice combat occurs. And the reason why combat occurs is because I'm near the coast and it becomes easier to spot the enemy fleets. I'm going to go here, and again, I'm going to attack. In this case, I've destroyed it. So initiating combat, and I apologize for the other one, I kind of blew that one. Initiating combat near a coast, it becomes a lot easier to find the enemy because from the British point of view, their coast has a high recon level, which makes sense because they have coastal watchers. Normally they would have aircraft there and so forth. So anything that appears near the coast here will have a high recon level, and as a result, any fleet that goes to intercept it will be able to spot the enemy fleet and more than likely engage it. Is engagement guaranteed? No. But is the percentage high? Yes. So keep that in mind. And you notice in this particular situation, this fleet here, again, the recon level is high. I can turn around here and I can try to eliminate the sort of interdiction here of the port by moving out, and I prefer to give my carriers a little bit of defense. So again, I can attack this one here, causing some damage. Again, being near a coast here, what ends up happening is it becomes a little bit easier to spot. Here is a knight right here, and I go to attack, and once again, even though it's spotted and there was some firing occurred, there was no damage in the surface combat, as you can see. Both fleets were damaged, but it did, because it was a night attack, it did surprise the other enemy fleet, and unfortunately, even though it surprised it didn't cause any damage, and the next turn it still will be able to interdict some supplies. Hopefully this video helps with some of the basics with regard to naval combat. The idea again is just to introduce some of the basics and not get into much detail, and you can see the different things that naval fleets can do, and hopefully you'll enjoy the game better, understanding the units and how to apply them within the game itself. Enjoy the video. Thank you for watching. Bye now.